Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to our morning coffee time for July the 2nd. Currently cloudy here in White Salmon on Jewett Creek. But I saw someone to our east here said it's sunny, so maybe there's hope for us today. Okay, so can everyone see and hear me okay? See a couple thumbs up here and there. So who's all here? 45, 49. So I see 3 thumbs up. So I guess the question is, what's the third? The first is good picture, good sound, good company. Or maybe this is the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. I don't know. Well, we'll give a few moments here for people to come in. Let's see what's on the news today. I did see yesterday an email reminding people that Ajahn Viradamo has another talk, Zoom talk on this Friday, so tomorrow afternoon. There's enough going on that I can't seem to quite remember what Ajahn Suchita's schedule of talks are, but we're rapidly approaching the Uposatha Day on Sunday, and that is the beginning of the Vasa or rainy season. So the monastics will be making determinations to stay put and take up the practice of the Vasa. So starting Monday. So and no changes here, especially under COVID. So, and Gustavo, yes, your question about will coffee meetings still continue during the Vasa? Yes, they will. So, not too much changes here at the Hermitage during the Vasa. There's already not a lot of daily work or activities going on, and the monks have quite a bit of time for solitary practice. So, in some of the training monasteries and busier communities, sometimes there's a concerted group study of the monastic discipline and some additional teachings, and then sometimes additional opportunities for daily practice, sometimes the expanded daily schedule. At a Baigiri, our parent monastery, people take personal retreats. The whole community gets a chance to do some personal retreat during the summertime. So yeah, the Vasa is not going to interrupt this morning coffee time. The thing that might interrupt it is once we return to walking for alms in White Salmon. And I'm not really sure when that's going to happen, when it feels safe and people in the community feel comfortable with that. Right now, it doesn't fit the guidelines we have here in our state. So we'll be waiting for a while, I suppose, at least another month or so before that happens. And I have a few ideas how we could preserve something of this. When that happens, I could either start earlier or it could be shorter. I could start earlier. It might not be every day. Okay, well, we're starting to get up to our regular numbers here. So 5 after the hour, I think we can assume everybody who wants to be here will be here. So yeah, when we get to, I see a comment from Linda here. Earlier is good. So that's what I think. I like to get up early, and I like to start things early. And I think people that don't live on the West Coast might like earlier. But if they want to participate live. But we will work that out when it's more clear when that's going to happen. So I think we have at least another month. Okay, well, let's see what everyone's thinking here. Thought I saw something in here early on from Henning. Good morning, Henning. When doing loving kindness meditations, I find it hard to generate feelings towards myself, as if I'm numb or empty. Can you talk about how to open the heart towards oneself? Sure. Yeah, this is surprisingly common report from people trying to develop loving kindness meditation. They feel especially obstructed offering loving kindness to oneself. So, and it's something about our cultural conditioning and maybe tendencies to harbor critical thoughts towards oneself, or even ill will towards oneself, or maybe it just feels wrong to extend that kind of loving friendliness towards oneself for one reason or another. So one very simple thing is we do have this ability to relate to ourselves in almost a objective or slightly detached way. It's not hard to have the conscious experience that feels like it's a little bit objective about this mind, this body. And you can leverage that, Henning, to hack or hijack, hack, start to sort of develop a habit towards being able to sort of generate these feelings of goodwill and loving friendliness towards oneself. So you can also sometimes a good thing to do is imagine a younger Henning. Like imagine yourself as a little boy or as a teenager or some other sort of period of your life. Or you could even imagine yourself older and suffering more of the challenges of the aging process. So, and see if that sort of makes it a little bit easier. I find that helpful. It helps distance you from the stickiness of some of what's going on with the habits that you have identifying with yourself in the temporal, in the here and now. So sometimes we're all too obsessed with our own faults and foibles. So just doing that time shifting or thinking in a little more objective thing, because you are a being too, and this is an exercise in learning how to unconditionally, without preference, and not based on any specific condition, generate these feelings for all living beings, including this living being. So As Ajahn Sona said one time, if you think you need to deserve it, then you've got it all wrong. Loving kindness doesn't have anything to do with deserving it. It's unconditional, and we need to generate the ability to extend this goodwill, the wish, as I call it, for happiness, for well-being, for safety, to be the recipient of favorable conditions and blessings, to be able to generate that wish towards any and all living beings, self included. So maybe one last thing, Henning, that you might try. The teaching that comes out of the suttas that I really like, I mean, the two suttas that I look to the most for guidance on this theme of metta bhavana is the Karaniya Metta Sutta, and the other one is this teaching, which is most easily accessed by looking at our chanting book, the Suffusion with Divine Abidings. And the Suffusion with Divine Abidings is more kind of a spatial, visual meditation. I will abide, pervading 1/4, with a heart imbued with loving kindness, likewise a second, likewise a third, a fourth, above, below, around, everywhere, and to all as to myself. I will abide, providing the all-encompassing world. So there's a lot of spatial direction that we're giving to this. So it's like a visual, spatial kind of contemplation. And if you think about it like that, and especially if we start that whole process directed toward a space here, like in the core of our being, or at least what we sense as this body and mind, start that kind of process there, spreading and radiating out in the 4 directions, or the 4 quadrants, above, below, around, and then everywhere. You step outside, you might be able to use that just to step outside of even thinking about it in terms of beings. Just thinking about it, it's like generating this beautiful, warm wish for well-being that is completely devoid and empty of ill will towards any and all beings. So one can imagine and emote and connect with the feeling tone that's generated by this imagining that then stimulates this kind of pure-hearted emotion in the core of one's consciousness and being, and then radiates out. There's no me there. There's no me, there's no other, there's no friend, there's no enemy, there's no near beings or far beings necessary in that. It's much more elemental, just focusing on the pure emotion of it, and even I would say the physicality that accompanies that very beautiful and sort of pure wish for beings to be well, safe, happy. So that's a few thoughts there, and my wish is for you to overcome that emptiness and numbness and fill it with that loving warmth. Okay, I'm going to skim down and just see what's highlighted for me here. If I've missed other questions, people have to draw my attention to them by popping them back in there. Good morning, Marianne. Welcome back. Would a house infested with fleas, ants, and cockroaches be an exception to the first precept of not killing? If not, please explain the rationale. Yeah, that's a difficult one, Marianne. There's no exception. So, and we do everything we can to practice prevention so that we don't get into those situations. So, like in Thailand, especially, the most common style of a dwelling, especially a monk's hut, is built on stilts, and many of the pillars that support the structure have a little water moat or a little moat filled with some used motor oil, which seems to keep the ants from crawling up into the dwelling. So, and then there's all kinds of other elaborate things that are tried. So, but inevitably, we share space with all of these things, and part of the karma of being alive and sharing space with these things is we have to deal with it. So, and there's no exception. Like, so, we're going to incur some negative karma if we're intentionally killing living beings. But don't think of precepts in too much of a binary sort of sense. These are, people often get kind of fixated on, is it right or wrong? And, it's not a bad determination or thing to sort of bring into kind of consciousness, but all these things are sort of weighted. So, and there are various kind of trade-offs that one has to make so that one can continue to live and function in the world. So, one always in ethical matters and in making sort of determination about what to do needs to be very clear about what one's intention is. And if the intention is out of irritation, anger, ill will, etc., then I think there's gonna be more negative resultants than if it's based on something that's very necessary and practical. So, and like many years ago, in the very early days of Abhayagiri, we had a massive cockroach infestation of the old house that was originally on the property. And we relied on that house for everything, and we were still very much in the process of getting permission and in the good graces of the county building department. And there was still some debate around how much the health department would need to regulate what it was that we were doing there. And we spent, I forget how long, doing everything possible to try to deal with this infestation of cockroaches that we had. And I won't go into the horror of it, but it was bad. And there was no way we could deal with it in any non-lethal way. And if we would have just absolutely decided we can't kill these things, we would have had to tear the house down or abandon it, or I don't know what you would do. And it was critical to the running of the monastery. And eventually a lay supporter asked permission to call in exterminators to deal with it. And Sangha accepted that offer, and also accepted that while we weren't directly ordering that, we were accepting someone's offer to sort of deal with this, and that there's some negative karma that was being kind of created there, but it seemed like the most practical or necessary thing to do. So what the weight of that karma is, it's hard to know, but I know we made just every effort, extensive efforts to deal with it in every other way, and I know it wasn't done out of mere irritation or repulsion at cockroaches or anything. It was just a practical concern that had to be dealt with, and we learned a lot about cockroaches, and also we put a lot of measures in to make sure that that never happened again, and to my knowledge, it never did. And when I remember when the exterminators came and did their work, they said this was about as bad as it can get. They said, they asserted that you wouldn't be getting rid of these things with any other means. So it's a sad chapter, and it's sad to have to do things like that sometimes. But no exceptions. No exceptions. Let's see where we're at. Good morning, Shelley. I found the concept of vasana, traces that remain in the mind. Can you speak how to deal with them? Or what does that really mean? Well, this term vasana, the only context that I'm very familiar with it is it kind of comes up to explain a little bit about what we might think of as deeply embedded characteristics, like personality. And people have various characteristics or a certain tendency or personality. And there's some teachings in the suttas that talk to how even an arahant or enlightened person isn't free of certain of these kind of personal characteristics. So, and I think probably the most common one that I've heard discussed before was Sariputta had this habit of leaping over mud puddles or something when he's walking down the path, and he was criticized for it as it not being kind of proper etiquette for a monk. It's a bit too lively, a bit too playful. And I think it's the Buddha is asked about this, and he sort of says, never mind, if you knew how many lifetimes Sariputta was born as a monkey or something, and how much this is embedded in his vasana or something, you'd understand. So I can't really think of other examples. They might exist in the suttas. I'm sure the commentaries have more to say about it, but I'm less versed in the commentaries. And but in terms of Buddhist doctrine, the Buddha is said to go beyond vasana, and like the Buddha, there's numerous places in the suttas where they're talking about the characteristics of a Buddha, and it's almost like an archetype. So my sort of sense for it is the Buddha has these incredible perfected paramitas, or spiritual faculties, that support him arising into the world and becoming a Sammasambuddha. And in the suttas, you get this picture that it's almost like something of an archetype, or this role that is played in the grand expanse of history and Buddhist cosmology. And due to his paramitas, the Buddha is said to overcome vasana are these tendencies, but other beings don't overcome these. So even an arahant still has vasana. Traces of personality or characteristic that are not, I guess, transformed or eradicated or something. But they don't suffer. So, and these tendencies, I guess you would have to say they're purified, just on a theoretical basis. Like if somebody's an arahant, they're incapable of doing things out of greed, hatred, delusion. So, we need to bound what we mean here by characteristics or personality traits or something. And somebody has the vasana of being foul-mouthed and abusive, they don't become an arahant and still continue to sort of verbally abuse people in that way. So can't conceive of one doing that without some sense of anger and ill will. Okay, let's see. I don't see any other highlighted questions targeted at me. Oh, here I see questions here. Samrit, I'm trying to train everybody. This will really help me. If you type at and then PAC, a pop-up should come up on the chat, and then click on it. It says, and then it will fill in Pacific Hermitage. And that will help me find this a little better than just the question marks. So, dear Ajahn, it's very hard to generate metta towards people who have caused immense humiliation. How to deal with that? Well, one is don't start off there, Samrit. Don't bring them to mind. Practice generating for other people. That's probably the most important thing. When you become stronger in your ability to generate loving kindness, then you might reach a place where you can include them. So, but if you have difficulty doing it, don't make that the place you start, and just maybe exclude that person from the way it is that you practice generating metta and loving kindness. And the more adept you get at loving kindness, and the more you understand the benefit of that being the basis for the way that you relate to all beings, then the more you might be able to sort of start to include somebody like that. So when you do bring that person to mind, you really should dwell on that they're the heir of their own karma, develop some equanimity, and also a healthy dose of forgiveness. So you don't want to stay in this negative relationship to that person, harboring hurt in any sense of bias or ill will towards them. Good morning, Carolyn. Ajahn, this is a question from earlier this week. What is meant by devas, as in recollection of the devas? I don't know if there's how well it's specified in the Sutta Pitaka itself. One could look to the Visuddhimagga for maybe some definition if you want, but loosely, heavenly beings. So, so just beings that are more refined and pure than one, and enjoy the the benefits of living in a heavenly realm. So, and I guess the beauty and the virtue of those beings. It's not really a practice I've ever tried to make, that I've ever tried to even practice. But it is there as one of the recollections. So, rarely mentioned even, I'd say, in the circles that I run in. So, Joanna Henderson, I've seen people putting cinnamon in spaces where ants merge. Yes, I've heard of that too. So, cinnamon or cinnamon oil. We've actually tried that here at the Hermitage. We have lots of ants here and lots of little critters. Okay, let's see. Maybe just a couple more and then we'll close out for the day here. Eleanor, do you sometimes feel bored when you meditate? Or did you when you first started meditating? What to do when we feel bored? Yeah. No, let's see. There's 3 questions here. Answer the first one is no, I never feel bored when I meditate. But I have experienced boredom in meditation. Usually it's generated because, oftentimes when I would feel boredom, it's because I'm living in a monastery and I had no input or control over the schedule. So there's a lot of times that you need to meditate for hours when you'd rather be doing something else. So, and it's not that I don't want to meditate. It's just certain times of the day it's very difficult and you'd rather meditate. Other times of the day or the conditions are not very favorable. So, or there's other things that you're kind of engaged in, whether it's studying or work in the monastery, and the mind's attached and caught up in that. But live in a community, we have communal agreements, a contract with your teacher and the other people living in the monastery, the other monastics. So sometimes that, more often than not, that would be the case. Or sometimes you run out of steam. All the efforts don't seem to be connecting with the kind of effectiveness or the kind of mind states that you're hoping to cultivate in your practice, and you feel a bit despondent and the mind slips into boredom. So I think as you mature in your practice, you develop the ability to really learn how to use the time and adapt to the conditions. So one, you develop skill and a certain level of mastery. So that kind of eliminates getting stuck in boredom, but also your sense of how it is to put forth right effort in a way that's useful during your meditation period expands. And so I'd say I never feel bored, rarely feel bored, or if there is boredom there, and it's subtle enough that I'm not yet apprehending it as boredom. So what do we do when you feel bored meditating? Generate interest. Generate interest. And it might start off with a curiosity about, what is this feeling of boredom? How does it arise? How is it felt? Why am I feeling bored? Clearly, on some level, I'm doing what I want to do here. I want to meditate. Why does the mind feel like this? Why does it feel flat, uninspired, etc.? So you can get curious and interested in boredom and trying to understand it more deeply. So Or you could just reinvigorate a curiosity, a sincere and deep kind of curiosity for the object of your meditation. So, because that can flag, and you need to kind of pull back and arouse that faculty of curiosity and interest again. So, yeah, and Sumana, this is a great comment here. This was in the back of my mind as well. Ajahn Sona classes boredom under ill will aversion. So the strategy for replacing works well for me. So yeah, there's oftentimes some sort of ill will that's fueling the boredom. So okay, well, we're going to leave it at that today, friends. So thanks for joining us, and hope everyone has a good day. We'll see you tomorrow, Friday, July the 3rd. So, and just reminder, Ajahn V is giving a talk tomorrow afternoon. So for all the Ajahn V fans out there, put that on your calendar, and have a good day. Bye for now.